When the Nuremberg trial opened, the prosecution didn't treat mass murder as an isolated wartime crime. It examined how law, administration and authority had been used to make persecution possible and then irreversible. At the centre of that case sat Hermann Göring. By 1935, Goring was already one of the most powerful figures in the Nazi state. He was Prime Minister of Prussia, head of the police apparatus in Germany's largest state, and a central figure in the economic and administrative life of the country. That year, the regime introduced the Nuremberg Laws. They stripped Jews of German citizenship and reclassified them as a racial category outside the political community. They didn't order killing, but they removed legal protection. At Nuremberg, the American chief prosecutor, Robert H. Jackson, repeatedly returned to the point. Robert H. Jackson: the Nuremberg laws deprived Jews of citizenship, did they not? Goering: yes, they defined who belonged to the German national community. Jackson: and once a person was no longer a citizen, he no longer enjoyed the protection of the state. Goering: they were still protected by law in other respects. This answer shows Goering's defence, that discrimination, however harsh, was lawful and therefore not criminal. Jackson pursued consequence rather than theory. Jackson: were you aware that as a result of these laws and their implementing decrees, Jews were dismissed from employment, excluded from professions, and deprived of economic livelihood? Goering: yes, that was the intention, to separate Jews from German life. Jackson: and you exercised authority in enforcing those measures? Goering: I exercised authority within the framework of existing laws. Goering didn't deny the effects, he denied criminal responsibility. For the prosecution, this distinction couldn't stand. The Nuremberg laws were treated not as isolated statutes, but as the opening phase of a continuous process. By the late 1930s, illegal exclusion became economic destruction. By November 1938, exclusion erupted into violence. After Kristallnacht, Goering didn't attempt to restore protection to Jews. Instead, he systemized persecution, converting chaos into policy and collective punishment. He later acknowledged that, given these measures, he wouldn't like to be a Jew in Germany. Jackson: so you understood the effect of the system you helped administer? Goering: I understood that the measures were severe. Jackson thus demonstrated how persecution began. The British prosecutor, David Maxwell-Fyfe, focused on where it led and what Goering knew as it escalated. David Maxwell-Fyfe: the Nuremberg laws removed Jews from legal protection. They were then excluded from economic life. They were later deported and confined in camps. Do you deny that sequence? Goering: no. Maxwell-Fyfe: then what began as law ended in coercion? Goering: later events went further than originally intended. Now, this admission was significant. Goering acknowledged progression while attempting to disclaim responsibility for its outcome. Maxwell-Fyfe pressed further. Maxwell-Fyfe: I'm not asking about regulations. I'm asking about the murder of millions of Jews. You were one of the most powerful men in the Reich. Are you saying that you didn't know? Goering: responsibility for such matters lay with Himmler and the SS. Now, this was Goering's line of retreat. Authority divided, responsibility fragmented. The prosecution now introduced a document that collapsed that defence. On the 31st of July, Goering signed a written order to Reinhard Heydrich, head of the Reich Security Main Office. The order instructed Heydrich to prepare a total solution of the Jewish question in the German sphere of influence in Europe. It directed that all Reich authorities were to cooperate with him. The order of the 31st of July 1941 reads as follows: From Hermann Göring to Reinhard Heydrich, Berlin, 31st of July 1941. In supplement to the task given to you on the 24th of January 1939 to bring about by emigration or evacuation a solution of the Jewish question as favourable as possible under the existing circumstances, I hereby commission you to carry out all necessary preparations with regard to organisational, practical and material matters for a total solution of the Jewish question in the German sphere of influence in Europe. Wherever official authorities of the Reich are concerned, they are to cooperate with you. I furthermore charge you to submit to me without delay a draft showing the organisational, practical and material measures necessary for carrying out the intended total solution of the Jewish question. At the time, shootings of Jews were already underway in the occupied East. When questioned, Göring admitted signing the document. He denied that it had authorized killing. He described it as an administrative coordination order. The prosecution did not dispute this description. Instead, it argued something more consequential. The Göring order granted authority. It placed Heydrich and the RSHA at the center of Jewish policy across occupied Europe. It compelled civilian ministries to cooperate, and it required practical, organizational, and material planning. The next step followed 6 months later. On the 20th of January 1942, senior officials gathered at a villa in Berlin for what became known as the Vance Conference. This is the villa where that conference took place. The meeting didn't debate whether Europe's Jews should be destroyed. That was assumed, indeed known. Heydrich opened Vance by saying that he'd been entrusted with responsibility for implementing the final solution, authority that rested directly on Göring's written order. Civilian ministries discussed transport, labour allocation, legal definitions and administration. So therefore, Vance didn't initiate genocide. It coordinated it. So, at Nuremberg, this sequence proved decisive. The Nuremberg Laws removed protection. Göring enforced and expanded exclusion. His 31st of July 1941 order authorized coordination. Vance ensured compliance. And Göring had stood at every single junction. The tribunal rejected the argument that legality exercised responsibility. The law had not restrained violence. It had prepared for it. Through Hermann Göring, the court demonstrated how genocide could proceed without a single written command to kill, through authority, delegation, and administration. That principle became one of Nuremberg's enduring legacies, that when the law becomes a weapon, those who wield it remain responsible for what follows. Thank you very much for listening. Hope you found that interesting. I've done a variety of videos related to the Vance conference and also now on the Nuremberg trial as well. I upload every day at 2000 hours my time, that's Central European time, because I live in Poland and in Germany. On most days I upload a short video of up to 3 minutes in length, but on Tuesdays and Fridays I do longer ones with longer documentary videos, especially on Fridays. If you'd like to know when I'm uploading, then the best way of all is to subscribe. I also offer channel membership, which costs either £5 or €6 or $6, and that gives you access now to over 800 videos which are members only. For the moment, thanks for listening and bye for now.